welcome to Filmi Ladies. We are Pithu and Beth, and this month and in this episode, we are celebrating Pride. I have my
Happy
little
Pride.
Pride bracelet on that a drag queen gave me at Drag Story Hour at my local library. Um, so for this Pride episode, I decided to go very mainstream and decided to pick a movie that I have only seen once before and I liked it, but I didn't remember much about it. And so I was like, wait, let me go watch this like extremely famous mainstream movie that is the first movie that comes to people's minds when they think of queer movies. And so that movie is, of course, Fire by Deepa Mehta. And it came out, it was released in Canada at the Toronto International Film Festival in 96, but it was released in India in 98. So it's either a 96 movie or a 98 movie, depending on which release date you're looking at. And then Beth is going to talk about two movies that I have to read from WhatsApp. One is, they're both Bengali. One is Nil Nirjane, and the other is Arekti Premer Golpo. And they're both from the 2000s. And I have no idea what the story is, so Beth will tell us about them. So, Beth, do you want to give us like a quick synopsis of both of these movies?
Sure. So Nil Nirjane is from 2003. Wikipedia says it's the first film shot for a digital platform in India,
Oh,
whatever that means exactly. It is the story of several different pairs of people at a kind of rural riverfront resort somewhere in West Bengal. So there's a mother-daughter pair. The mother is Moon Moon Sen. The daughter is her real life daughter, Rema Sen.
hmm.
There is a father-daughter pair. And then there's a young unmarried couple, but they are a couple. And then there's also the hotel manager and a local woman who kind of works at the hotel sometimes. So those are the main people. And then there's also a rock band, which is a real life band. Apparently, they're called Cactus. I'm sure if you know Bengali music, you know them. I asked Sujoy, our friend from Kandan podcast, like, "Oh, did you listen to Cactus much?" She's like, "Oh yeah, I know who they are, but I'm not really into them." So they do most of the soundtrack for this. And so they are there filming a video at
Okay.
the resort. And it's about the different kind of comings and goings of these people and a bit of an exploration of love, maybe attachment more is what I would say. I think not attachment as in like your attachment style, but just like people being
Mm,
together and that kind of thing. And one of the pairings is a queer pairing.
mm.
And then the other movie I watched is Arekti Premer Golpo, which is another Bengali film. This is Rituparna Ghosh's debut as an
Mm.
actor, and
Okay.
he plays a. So, okay, here's where I'm going to falter. I think we call now in 2025, we would say this character is trans.
Okay.
So that is what I'm going to say. My apologies most sincerely if that is not correct, but to me, that's how I was understanding it from 2025 in the United States. The character refers to themselves as having, I believe, as being a third category, neither male nor
Mm.
female. So maybe I should say non-binary instead of trans. So, okay, I'll switch to non-binary actually. Thank you for accompanying me on that linguistic journey. Non-binary film director, documentary film director who is in Calcutta making a film about a real life, real to our lives, not just real in the world of the movie, male actor who played women characters on stage in Bengal
Mm.
Jatra Theater.
Mm.
And this is a real person named Chapel Bhaduri or Chapel Rani, um, who who the film implies is non-binary in some way or other also. So then in
Okay.
flashbacks, we see Rituparna Ghosh playing this real life person as a younger person. So we have current day Rituparna Ghosh as the director, the real life actor as an older man. I think he's in his 70s or so, and then
Mm.
flashbacks. And then also there are two other people who play kind of versions of themselves in the flashback as well. So it's a
Okay.
movie about acting. It's a movie about filmmaking. Mostly a movie about, again, about identities and attachments
Mm.
and what different people can kind of give you in life or so. When we decided to do kind of a Pride Month episode, I knew I wanted to bring Ritu Ghosh in. I feel like
Right.
it's absolutely essential for talking about this topic if we're going to go beyond Hindi. So I had
Mhm.
seen this movie before, but it had been a while. And then the other one I had never seen before. And was kind of interested to see what 2003 was going to do with a queer women couple.
Okay, there were queer women couple in there,
Yes.
but Moon
Rama
Moon is not one of
Sen,
them.
right, the Rama Sen and then the other younger woman,
Oh,
the two daughters become involved.
okay, gotcha. Interesting.
Yeah.
Have you seen Fire?
I have, but like you, I remember being impressed, but it's been a long time since I
It's
saw
been a long time. Fire just isn't, I mean, Deepa Mehta's movies just in general are not movies that I like rewatch.
it.
Like I rewatched Earth for the Khanna brothers debut episode, and
Yeah.
I enjoyed watching Earth, but I've never watched Water. Mostly because I don't know if I trust Lisa Ray and John Abraham to do a good job. The
That's
casting is
how I
not
remember it, is that maybe they're not the best people to put in the
like
movie.
it's not confidence inducing to read those two names.
No,
um but
no.
Fire, um like I had seen it so long ago, and I remember just being taken by both Nandita Das and Shobana Azmi, but mostly Nandita Das because she was so like new to me. Like I had no idea who this person was. Shobana Azmi, of course, I knew her. So,
Sure.
but this time when I watched it, I loved it. But also, I could not stop gushing to myself about Shobana Azmi. Man, this woman, she comes on screen and I can't look away.
Mhm.
She's so expressive and so amazing, and I feel like in the past month I've seen so much stuff with Shabana. Because like for our Mother's Day episode, I picked
Ah,
Masoom.
right.
Then I recently watched Bengali Night because I wanted to watch Hugh Grant's Gravity Defying Hair. And so like I watched it for Hugh Grant, but then Shabana, like I was just like, ah, Shabana. And
Mm.
then in this movie also it's like every time she comes on screen, I can't look away. And I had completely forgotten that her husband in this movie is King of BDE, Kulbhushan Kharbanda.
Of course.
And I was like, oh my, it's Kulbhushan Kharbanda. Also, this movie has Javed Joffrey, which I had completely forgotten.
Oh, yeah, I didn't
He
remember that either.
he plays Nandita Das's husband, and he is such a jerk. Beth, I was so upset constantly at him because he is such a twerp and he's such a horrible human being. So they're newly married. Javi Jaffrey and Nandita Das have only been married for like 3 days because the movie starts with them on their honeymoon at the Taj Mahal in Agra, and he has zero interest in the goings on. And he basically is like, for a couple that has been married for 3 days, he literally could not care less about Nandita Das. And she just looks like a vision. I mean, it's Nandita Das. She of like this gorgeous coppery brown skin and her beautiful black hair. And she's wearing like a maroon
Mm.
silk sari. And I was just like, ah, I want to look at you. And he's just a jerk. And like every time Javi Jaffrey came on screen, I wanted to like throttle him. But not because it's Javi Jaffrey, but because the character is so infuriating. But he did such a good job. And I was like, Javi
I was
Jaffrey, the
gonna ask how you
actor?
felt about the casting of him.
He was amazing. But
Um,
whose idea was it to cast Javed Jaffrey in this movie?
Never know, right? I mean, we've
He's
said
just
before, sometimes mainstream people end up in something not mainstream and they really blow your socks off. You had no idea they had it in them.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
anything, I'm not that I've seen Javi Joffrey in so many things, but like every time I've seen him in something, he's always doing something goofy. Like he's always like a comic person, right? And in this one, he's just like he really brings it. And to be able to hold your own in a film where there's one Ms. Shabana Azmi, and there's Kulbhushan Karbanda, and there's Nandita Das, and then you're Javi Joffrey, and you do a good performance, and I'm just like, huh. I had no idea. I was like, well, good on you then. Although I still wanted to like slap him. Um, but it's such a good movie. And I was kind of shocked at how like tight it is.
Mm,
Like it's so fast paced for a movie from 98 and for a movie that's very indie and arty. Like in the first 20 minutes of this film, they have already established everything that's going on in this house. Like this house that's a joint family, but also like a business. Like they own like a takeaway restaurant.
mm,
And there's like the older matriarch who can't speak because she's had a stroke and she has to ring a bell. And the sons are Kulbhushan Karbanda and Javed Jaffrey. Their wives are Shabana and Nandita Das. And there's a servant who's played by Ranjit Chaudhary. He's amazing. He plays Mundu. He's so nasty though.
yeah.
Right, because when I saw him, I'd forgotten. I was like, "Oh, it's you," and then I was like, "Oh, it's you." So it's like from the outside, it looks like such a kind of a wholesome family. Like, sure, Javed is being a jerk on the honeymoon, but they look like a nice, normal, regular family in Delhi. And it's like, it's shot very nicely in like this basti in Delhi. And it's like all the warm colors, right? Like this, speaking of like colors for a color episode, this is a very yellowy, browny, orangey, like very earthy tones, and not a pastel color in sight.
Mhm.
And Shabana and Nandita Das are always wearing like saris, and they're always like these beautiful cotton handloom saris, and they look so stunning in them. And but there is something rotten in the kingdom of Denmark. So there's definitely a lot of tension in the air. And I just thought that Deepa Mehta as the director did such a good job. Like she quickly gets to the heart of the matter, and the story just unfolds really, really fast. And I feel like the romance, because they start out as sisters-in-law who are both trapped in loveless marriages, I feel like they're coming together, and like it's so seamless how they show them. First, they're strangers who are tied by this bond by marriage, and they live in the same house, and they work together in the restaurant. But then slowly they develop a friendship and empathy towards each other and compassion. And then they kind of become friends. And then at some point, something happens, and they realize that they want to be lovers of each other. And it's very interesting because it's like this blurring of boundaries. Like there's a scene where Shabana Azmi is going to oil Nandita Das's hair, which
Mm.
is like such a common thing that you see women do. Like it's like literally like a sleepover trope, right? Like little girls like braiding each other's hair. Like it's such a female friendship thing to do. But also it's maybe a little too lingering,
Mm.
right? Or it's kind of like they're admiring each other, and they each person thinks the other is looking so pretty, but it's a little too lingering. So there's all this like tension, which on one hand I was like, I mean, you're Shabana and you're Nandita, I would be guilty of the same. I would also be lingering too much, but so I just thought that was so well done. And like before I knew it, when I'm watching the movie, these two women are in love with each other, and it you see them so happy because like their husbands are such jerks, and like suddenly you see the unfolding of their like love and their identity. Like I almost feel like this movie has less to do with love and more to do just with connection, because they're so starved of like
Mhm.
love and affection and interest. And to see that they're getting that love and affection and kindness and connection from another person who really sees them irrespective of what their gender is, I think that was like very heartwarming. Like at its core it really is like a love story.
Mhm.
And then as the movie unfolds, eventually the husband, well, Kulbhushan Kharbanda discovers, because he walks in on them having sex, and I was kind of astounded by how direct and open this sex scene was. Like, no problem, no notes, but I was kind of taken aback. I was like, "Huh, did they use a body double?" But it was very. I was like, "Huh, wow, that's interesting." And then he walks in on them, and then he's really angry, and then at the end, Shabana's sari catches fire because she's making tea, and so the gas is open, right? So it's an open flame, and her sari catches fire, and you can see Kulbhushan Karpanda scoops up his mom, his elderly mom, who's like disabled. He scoops her up and tries to take her without even looking back at Shabana, and I was just like, I hope you die in this fire. I hate you so much right now. And then in the last scene, you see Shabana with her sari in tatters, which she's managed to get away, and she goes to the Nisamuddin Dargah at night, which is where Nandita Das's character is going to meet her, because they've decided that they can't live here anymore, which good for them, and they're going to start life anew. And they see each other, and that's how the movie ends on like a positive note. And I was just taken aback by this movie is really good.
Yeah.
It's really well made, and it's powerful, and it's strong, and I have to give props to everyone associated with it. I think Deepa Mehta did a brilliant job. I think she casted superbly, because Shabana Azmi is just the queen of everything, right? And so she's great. Kulbhushan Karbanda as like this indignant person who's like, this is against our culture. I was like, I'll give you one thappad. Like, let me tell you about culture, you horrible man. And then Javed Jaffrey so good. Every single person in this movie is good. The cinematography is great. The script is great. The dialogues are so good. Like, no notes. I loved it. Would I watch it again? Probably not. It was a little much for me. I needed a martini break after that. I went to lunch with my friend. But it was really good. And I was reading up a little about it, and I discovered that we have Farhan Akhtar to thank for the end of this movie. So
Hmm.
apparently the way the script was written, at the end, Shabana Azmi's character dies
Mm.
because the flames engulf her, and so she like dies, and so poor Nandita Das is waiting at the dargah for her to show up, and she doesn't show. And when Shabana Azmi was deciding if she should do this movie or not, she asked her whole family, like she asked Javed Akhtar and Zoya and Farhan and everyone they thought, and Javed Akhtar was like, "You're gonna have to stand by this movie. You're gonna have to defend it. So if you want to do it, but ask yourself if you're willing to do that, and if you are, then do it. But if you're not willing to like get into a whole think about it, then don't do it." And she was like, "Okay, fine." And then Zoya Akhtar told her to do it, and Farhan Akhtar, who was a teenager at the time when she narrated the story to him, he basically told her that the ending is terrible because now the audience is just going to be so disappointed that you just killed off that character. He said the film would do so much better if there's a happy ending.
Mm.
And so I agree with him. And so Shabana Azmi went back to Deepa Mehta and she said, "This is the feedback I got. I agree with it. What do you think?" And Deepa Mehta was like, "Okay, fine." And so they rewrote the ending to where she does escape from the fire and she shows up and meets Nandita Das, and one presumes that they go off and live together and there's a happy ending. And I was like, yes, I did not want this to have a sad ending, because Farhan Akhtar apparently made a good point where he said that the message is going to send is that, look what happens when two women decide to love each other.
Mm.
Like, look, one of them died. So it's like almost like divine providence or something. So he was like, you do not want to send that message out. And I was like, dang, for a teenager, you were smart, Farhan. Um, so I really like the ending. I like that it was like a happy ending. And I hope that they're off somewhere. Our two characters are off somewhere,
Mm.
having a thriving restaurant business and just living their best lives. So I highly recommend watching Fire if people haven't seen it, which would
Yeah.
shock me because I feel like everyone has seen Fire. But it's just one of those movies that doesn't get talked about as much anymore because it's too harrowing to watch
Well,
repeatedly.
and so much talking about it happened when it came out. Like,
Yes.
and I was obviously not around to pay attention to that at that time, but
Right.
even by 2005, 2006, when I started watching Hindi films, this was still a bit of a controversial, and people remember
Yeah.
the controversy, which was just about 10 years old at that time. So
Yeah.
I wonder if people kind of, no pun intended, burned out on Fire for a little bit, but now is a good time to move
Yeah.
basically 30 years.
Yeah. But it's also interesting because I've seen so many films that do have like gay relationships and stuff, but I still haven't seen anything that was as direct and as overt as
Mhm.
Fire is. And I do want to give them their flowers for that. So for example, Kapoor and Sons is a movie I really enjoy. I like the queer angle to it. I love the twist we discover at the end of Date Ishqiya. But I feel like a lot of these movies just kind of like skirt around the issue, and Fire is just like
Yeah.
front and center, and it's like you will pay attention. And also so many times the movies that do have like a queer storyline or whatever, it's often not central to the whole movie.
Hmm.
It's one of the many threads in a movie, right? Like Honeymoon Travels Private Limited, doesn't that have a character, the guy who's married to Sandhya Mridul's character? We discover he's actually gay. The actor's name is Vikram Chatwal. So sometimes you have movies like that where there's like one character off doing their own thing and you're like, huh, interesting. But Fire was just like, it was basically about these two
That's the
women.
story. Yeah.
So, and also like how many I mean, there's now like we have Majama, which had Madhuri Dixit in it, but until then, again, you had never seen like a big name like
Mhm.
Shabana Azmi in a movie like it's Shabana Azmi. It's not some new graduate of the National School of Drama, right? Like her name has a certain prestige associated with it. Like most people shied away from it. Like I remember Karan Johar speaking about when they wanted to make Kapoor and Sons, they offered Fawad's role to 6 different actors whom he didn't name, and they got 6 rejections. And
Wow.
so they thought that they wouldn't be able to make the movie because at that point they were like, well, 6 people have rejected this film. So if Fawad Khan hadn't said yes, like he was their 7th choice. And if he hadn't said yes, there was a risk that the film was going to be shelved. So the amount of courage it takes someone in 96, or if they were in talks in 94, 95, for Shabana Azmi to be like, sure, I'll do it. And apparently they deferred their salaries to make this movie because the movie was made on a budget of 800,000 US dollars. And they, at least the main cast, basically chose not. I think they just weren't paid for it or something. So they must have felt very strongly about it. So I still think that of all like the queer-ish movies that I've seen, this is definitely the one that's the most like,
Mm.
we're here, you know?
Mm.
But yeah, I really enjoyed rewatching it.
Mm.
Did you see it like a really long time ago too?
It sure seems like it. I can't remember exactly when, but yeah. And I because I became friends with Carla, aka Filmy Geek, fairly
Mm.
early on in my Bollywood viewing, and
And she's a Shabana.
yeah, and because it was, I believe it's that movie that introduced her to Shabana, and that
Wow.
there is no Shabana Azmi fandom for her without that film. If I
Of
recall, I
course.
apologize if I'm misremembering, but I think it's quite key to. So yeah, so Fire has always been one that and as someone watching these movies in the US, that one was easy to get on DVD back in the day, as I recall. It
Yeah.
was an art film, right? So
Yeah, yeah. I tangent. I know this has nothing to do with that, nothing, but I want to find out from Carla if she's ever watched that Bazonga movie that you watch of Shabana Azmi where she steals the baby.
she has because I
Oh, she has.
I referred to her blog post in that recording, I think, but she certainly, yeah, she has seen it. And I remember when I was with her, she was like, yeah, that one's a real WTF.
Okay. Nice. Okay, so tell me about that first movie that you saw. Also, how much of Moon Moon Sen do we get to see in it? Because I enjoy her.
Not a ton. This movie has something in common that I can't put my finger on with
Mm,
the Raj and DK film flavors that I taled about back for our NRI film
mm,
episode. Same approximate era. There's just something about this that does not read as very good
okay.
anymore. And maybe it didn't at the time either. I don't know. So if there are any listeners who have seen this film and would like to tell me their impression of it, I'd be very interested to know. But it just, I don't know. People are kind of, there's kind of a stiltedness or an artificiality to the way the lines are being delivered that
Mm,
isn't working for me. And sometimes a hyper stylized thing does work really well for me. But it's just this particular style, I think. And I wish I could put my finger on it better. But um, also the two women who end up being in the relationship together, they're both supposed to be about 18, 19, something like this. And at a certain point, you're just like, teenagers are so stupid. Or can be so stupid, and you're just kind of like, ugh. So, for example,
cue the Bengali night.
right, Ramus Sen's character always has a Walkman with earphones on,
Okay.
and so anytime anyone talks to her, she says, what?" And obviously, it is a metaphor, but like we get
Right.
it.
Right.
Really hammered home. And at the end of the film, she actually throws it away and says, I don't need to block out the world anymore, or something like that. You're
Oh.
like, girl, you could have just thrown it away, or you could have just set it down and walked away. She throws it into a puddle or water or something like, and you're just like, ugh. And then the woman she's in a relationship with is child of an army officer, which is relevant in that he is stationed far away from where she's been going
Mm,
to school. So they don't see each other very often. And she's got a temper and she, grabs at Rema Sen a couple times when she's angry that Rema has gone to watch the band or hang out with the band a little bit, but she
mm.
really likes the band. And her new love interest is really jealous and controlling in that way where maybe when you're a kid, you're like, ooh, romantic. And now you're like, no, bad,
Red flag.
bad. I think we're supposed to assume this is a first lesbian relationship for both of the
Mm.
young women. I don't know, but I feel like that's kind of how it was being presented. Um, but we all do things when first love that we probably wouldn't do later on as people with more knowledge. So you feel for them a little bit, and the film leaves it fairly open-ended, I think, about what's going to happen next because it leaves with all the people leaving the resort. So
Mm.
no, like where are they going exactly, and will they see each other again? And da 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 da. We don't really know. Moon Moon Sen is there just as her mother. She has more lines, I guess, than any of the adults in the older adults in the film, but she's definitely not the star. She's okay. I didn't think she was great either. She does have like the big floof hair that we associate some with her. Um, and then the other, I do want to put out a warning about this film. Film involves a lot of discussion of death by suicide among the other young couple, the ones who are unmarried but have been a couple for a while, and they have these endless conversations about we should break up. and the woman thinks they should break up, and the man doesn't really seem to think so, and they just go on and on. And then he says he's brought a lot of sleeping pills with him on this trip, uh,
Okay.
and then he takes a lot of them, um, and he does survive the film. He does,
Hmm.
but there's a lot of talk of death by suicide in this film.
Hmm.
Uh, that too seems like the kind of thing a high school student would have written and thought was sort of dramatic and romantic, and you're just, I don't know, the way it's, and maybe I'm supposed to get into the mindset that this is how they would actually talk because they're young, dramatic people. I think they're supposed to be sort of like university graduates because the woman talks about what would happen to my PhD if I go
Okay.
through with this kind of thing. But so they're a little older than the other two girls, but yeah, it's just kind of it didn't for all the drama, there's not much emotion in this film to me. It didn't
Hmm.
like resonate with me, and it had it's one of those films where when people are like, "Ugh, I hate art movies," this is what they're talking about.
Hmm.
You know what I
Is
mean?
it just? It sounds like it's just kind of flat.
It's flat. Yeah,
Hmm.
it's
Okay.
flat. But again, 2003, very early for a queer relationship being, it's not
Yeah.
the only relationship film in the film, but it's one of the two major ones. And then there's these other
Hmm.
things that happen. And, you know, Rama Sen, quite a fairly mainstreamy person in some ways, and obviously
Hmm.
film dynasty. So for her, maybe she felt safe to do this. I don't know. Maybe the
Hmm.
situation in West Bengal is a little different than in Hindi cinema. I can't really speak to that, but she's also in the other film that I watched. Interesting.
Okay.
She's around. Yeah. So again, like in 2003, how would this have struck any of us? I don't know. Um,
Okay.
and this is an occasion in which I missed Twitter where there were just more people and I could post like, hey, has anyone seen this?
Right.
Do you remember about its release and stuff like that? And I don't, that doesn't exist on Bluesky yet, at least where I am. So anyway, listeners, if you've seen this or remember people talking about it, please tell us. And also the videos for the band are also like, oh yeah, 2003. You feel a little bit like, ugh. But I didn't hate the music. And there's a bonfire scene at night
Okay.
when hotel guests are around and the band is playing. And they play at least two vintage Bengali film songs that I recognize. And I was so proud of myself. I'm like, I know that song, even
Right.
not to the part where the title comes from. So that's kind of cute, and people are like dancing and clapping and stuff. So that's kind of fun. But yeah, this is unless you are kind of doing a really deep dive into queer cinema of India, I think
Mm.
give this a skip. But if
Okay.
you are, and especially if you're, I assume lesbian relationships are a little less common than gay
Mm.
relationships if we make that dichotomy in these films. So this one would be, would fall into that category. So that's interesting. And then Arekti,
I have a quick question which has
yeah,
nothing to do with anything.
yeah.
How do people feel about Moon Sen versus Suchitra? Just because like the difference between them
Yeah.
is
I mean,
so
how are they
stark.
related is my take. Now, I have not seen
Yeah.
in very much. I've only seen a very small
I've
handful.
seen her in 100 days and that's it.
Right. So that she's in a
And in 100 days she gets killed.
right. She was in oh gosh, she was just in something I watched. I've never seen her as the star of anything, I don't believe.
Hmm.
It's always been like a somebody's girlfriend, kind
Yeah.
of further down the list.
Arm candy or something.
Maybe
Yeah.
she's in a song or something, but yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know
Oh,
her.
she's in Laken very briefly.
Who's she in
Sh-
Laken?
She's someone's wife in Laken. Like she's like a tiny, tiny role in like blink and miss it.
She's yeah, so she's kind of around. I don't have
Yeah.
thought she doesn't
Because
she looks like her mother to me at times. At
at
her
times,
Rama looks more like Suchitra to me
yeah,
than Moon Moon does, but
I agree. Rema definitely looks more like her grandma, but it's like when people talk about like Amitabh and Abhishek, like the legacy. Like to me, Amitabh and Abhishek are at least a little bit closer, as opposed to like Suchitra and Moon Sen. And I'm just kind of like, what? So I was just
yeah.
wondering.
I
I was
mean
just curious.
it'd be kind of like I mean Wahida Rehman does not have a child who acts, right? So
Right.
let's
Or or didn't you tell me that you watched like one or two movies that Satyajit Ray's son made and they were terrible?
yes,
Maybe that's a good
yes, I
comparison.
have, and that is true. Although, ooh, which is the biggest? Yeah, when I've done I have asked on Twitter, like, who's the biggest sort of nepo disappointment? Not even failed
Right.
disappointment. And obviously,
Yeah.
Udit Chopra is the one that most people go to, but I would like to
Oh,
visit Sandeep Ray. But I'd even forgotten about Moon Moon because I've seen so little of her.
Right.
But yeah, she's not strong in my experience. But again, I maybe haven't seen the right things. So,
I mean, that's also like Sharmila and Soha too. Like Seth has done very well for
right,
himself, but I would say
right.
like Sharmila and Soha as well. Okay. Okay. My digression is over. You can
No,
tell me
it's
about
a
the,
good question. And again, like so Moon Moon Sen is in, is in this film. Now, she is not in the queer relationship, but she's there.
yeah.
And I think it's interesting to note in this film that neither of the parents catch on. They just
Mm.
talk about, oh, our daughters are really hitting it off. They're like off by the bank exploring or whatever. I'm like, and they are.
Yeah. They're like, they're buddies.
Yeah,
They
and
adore
they
each
are.
other. Yeah,
And
they
they are
do.
mostly, there's something very girlish about their relationship. Like they're kind of like giggling a lot and kind of spinning
Mm.
around and holding hands and stuff, but it's very sweet. But they're also 18, so like it's fine.
Yeah.
But yeah,
It's like that in Fire, where they go for this like family picnic. And so Kulbhushan Kharbanda is sitting on the, they've just had like a heavy lunch over there, like a picnic lunch or whatever. And Kulbhushan Kharbanda is sitting over there. And Javed Jaffrey's like, oh, I ate too much. I need to like nap or something. So he lies down. And then Shabana Azmi is sitting. And then when Nadita Das says, oh, are your feet hurting? Like, I can massage them for you. And she's like, And then Nandita Das starts like massaging her feet. And then Kulbhushan, and then they're like, doing the eye contact, the two of them, and I was like, whoa. And then Kulbhushan Girlfriend, like, look at what a wonderful family God has blessed me with. You came into our house, and now the two of you are such good friends. And I was like, oh, if you only knew how good of friends they were.
which is, I feel like at least in this sort of fiction I've read or seen or whatever, that is something that women can get away with more easily than
Right.
men can, for example.
Yeah.
Especially men as depicted in a lot of these stories are like too dense to even figure out something might be happening until they walk in on an actual physical.
Yeah. Like you have to
Intimacy.
hit them over the head because, but also because like women are just so much more physically like
Right,
touchy and
right.
warm, and like
And
we
are
do
alone
favors
together in
for
the
each
house, and the
other.
men are out doing whatever money earning thing and whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a scene where Javed Jaffrey, like, because in the beginning, so Javed Jaffrey is he has a Chinese girlfriend, and he wants to marry her, and he wanted to marry her, and Kulbhushan Kharbanda was like, "That's fine if you want to marry her. Like, we don't care if you have a Chinese girlfriend. Like, that's totally okay." She doesn't want to marry him because she does not want to be stuck in like a joint family
Interesting.
system. Yeah, so
Interesting.
she's like, "No, thank you. I would rather just have this relationship. I like no strings attached, kind of."
Huh.
So he continues to see her even after he marries. He is nagged by the mother who's had the stroke and Kulbhushan Kharbanda to get married so that there can be like a male heir or something, because Kulbhushan and
Right.
Shabana Azmi cannot have children.
Right.
So that's why he's being nagged into it. And Nandita Das, of course, had no idea. And now she's stuck in this marriage with this husband who works during the day. And then in the evening, he goes off to meet Julie, his Chinese girlfriend, right? And
Right.
so in the beginning, she's always sad when he leaves because once she catches on that he's having an affair, she's so sad about it. And
Mhm.
so in the beginning, every time he's leaving, she's so unhappy. And one time she just breaks down and starts crying because she says to Shabana Azmi, I want to go home because she has no one here, right? But once she and Shabana begin their romance and now they're both happier, right?
Uh,
There's a scene where Javed Jaffrey is like, okay, well, I'm not going to come home tonight. And then he's being his usual self. And she's like, okay. And he's like, you're okay with that? And she's like, yeah, it's fine. And she truly does not give a shit. And she's like just doing whatever. And he's literally disappointed for a second. And I was like, oh, are your fifis hurt? Uh,
Your
but
face.
literally he's just kind of like, what? My wife just will not miss me. No, she won't miss you. Go away. So yeah, that I was just like so irate all the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, tell us about your next one.
Oh, yeah. So, Arekti Premer Golpo, yeah. So, kind of a complicated setup as I explained,
Mm,
with the flashbacks and all with different people, with someone from the current part playing a different person in the flashback, but obviously
mm,
to hammer home the parallels.
yeah,
Um, I like Ritu Ghosh better as a
director.
director than an actor, but I do think he's good here. There's particular moments where I think he's particularly good. And Rema Sen is a like a kind of what like, sh shot and location coordinator or something on the film, so she's
Mm,
in and out. If you watch Bengali films, you'll recognize some of the other people, like Indranil Sengupta is Ritu Parno's partner of sorts, but then he's also married to a woman. So he's Wiki says he's bisexual, and I don't know if he's so much bisexual as he is caving to societal pressure to have gotten married.
Mm,
I don't know. I don't know.
right.
His character is not really is not the main gist of the film.
Mm,
But there's interesting stuff in here about sort of voice presentation and physical presentation and hair and clothes. They kind of early in the film, they're filming where this famous actor lives in Calcutta, but then they kind of cave to, understandably, to pressure in that apartment complex or whatever. Like they don't want those stories like told, and they don't want the film crew there digging into this person's sexual past. Professional past seems to be fine, but sexual past, they don't want it. So then they go off to this other location to film, and it's a big old house owned by, or at least linked to them by Jishu Sengupta, who's another actor who
mm.
appears in, various Hindi and Southern Indian things as well as Indian, Bengali things. Um, and so they go off into the countryside to film somewhere else, which gives them a little more freedom to do the film the way they want to. And there's interesting stuff about, what kind of story are we telling about this person? Are we asking them to tell about themselves? Are we, you know, uh, there's a scene in the beginning where the director of the film is interviewed by, I guess, a TV station or something, and they're really curious, like, is this a professional story or a personal story? And the director says, like, if I was making a documentary on Amitabh Bachchan, it wouldn't matter what his sexuality was, right? And they're like, no, of course it wouldn't matter. And they're like, well, so why does this matter here? That kind of thing. So, um,
It's kind of like how no discussion of Karan Johar ever happens without discussion of his sexuality, right?
right,
Or the fact that he's never actually said anything. I think the fact that he's never actually said anything causes more speculation, because there's plenty of like openly gay folks in it, like Rohit Bal, the fashion designer, like so many people, like Ashok Rao Kavi, whatever. But I think with Karan Johar, the fact that he doesn't say it, I think causes more speculation. But of course, it's his choice whether he wants to say
yeah.
it or not. But it's like there's never any conversation about Kejo without that being brought up.
And this, the film director character played by Richaparna Ghosh is very adamant that they are who they are and they
Mm,
will apologize for it. But that is also slightly complicated at times. And like again, not to be too spoilery, but the his partner's wife announces she's pregnant at one point. So,
mm,
like, that's very complicated. You see his character kind of starting to fall for Jishu Sengupta's character a little bit. But it's
hmm
and then in the flashbacks, we see the younger version of the actor like getting uh, pushed out of doing, because eventually in Bengal, women were allowed on stage. So then men didn't need to do the women's roles as much. So
hmm
then this person was kind of like, well, where does that leave me? And then they go up,
Yeah.
end up being kind of a house servant for their lover, and then that person's wife is like has some kind of illness and can't take care of the house, and then I think a second wife comes on board and is really rude and awful. It's like it really speaks to, I think, the opportunities that people who don't fit a mainstream categorization, how what opportunities are limited to them and what they can and cannot do, let alone how they can express themselves, their identity,
Mhm.
and not. Um, there's interesting stuff in here about the kind of the creative process and being an artist, but that's not hammered home really. This is a more subtle film than the other one,
Okay.
but it's also much more solely about some of these, specifically these queer identities and some of the issues
Mhm.
these people are facing, because those are really the main people in the film.
I know Rituparno Ghosh acts in it, but is he also like the writer and director, or is he only
No, he's just
associated in this
star.
capacity?
So this was
Okay.
directed by Kaushik Ganguly and written by
Okay.
Kaushik Ganguly as well. So yeah, Ritu Parno is pretty much just a star
Okay.
in this film.
Because I've seen his movies and I
Uh,
love his
and
movies.
obviously we talked about Raincoat and
Chokher Bali.
Chokher Bali, right?
I love both of those. And then I've seen that other one that I can't remember the name. It starts with, is it Antar Mahal? I don't know. It had Soha Ali Khan and Abhishek Bachchan in it. I didn't care for that one that much.
Yeah, and I
I think it
would
was called Antar Mahal.
the I've seen a couple others of Ritu Parno Ghosh's films and I fully recommend them. There's one where he directed a version of Bomkesh Bakshi
Hmm.
with um oh no, well, the director of who's the director of Kahani?
Oh, Sujoy Ghosh?
Yes, Sujoy
Okay.
Ghost as Bumkesh, so that's fun. I
Okay.
really enjoyed that one. Years ago, Sujoy, Amrita, and I did a little like Bumkesh podcast mini series, and we, as I recall, those two did not like that film at all, but I do.
Okay.
It'd be people. If you want to put me in a like fancy Bengali house in the countryside in a movie, I'm like, bring it. That's me. I want that.
But you want the detective role though, or a guest role. You don't want to be the person who gets killed though.
No, but I would love to watch
Right.
the movie regardless.
Okay.
But yeah, I would say Rituparna Ghosh is a creator who died so young, 49.
Yeah.
Um, would de definitely recommend all the ones I've seen, I would say. But this, yeah, this one is again 2010. Like this is pretty early for a
Mhm.
non-binary featuring character. And Wikipedia says this is the first film about queerness to be filmed after the Delhi High Court struck down part of Section 377.
Okay.
Came at an interesting time in Indian history as well. But yeah, I recommend it. It's got beautiful music. It's got tiny little bits of the Jatra performances in it, not very
Mm.
much, but mostly it's about the filmmaker and then flashing back to see. But there's lovely scenes, for example, of the stage actor in his younger years, like with the long, long wigs and some of the beautiful outfits on to play different, I think mostly goddesses or
Mm.
divine women of some kind. And it's very, and that those portions are, I believe those portions are all black and white. So you get kind of
Okay.
an interesting effect there. So it's
Mm.
interesting, definitely worth a watch. And especially if you know, uh, thinking about how gender identities work, particularly in Bengali culture, right? Like, again, something I know nothing about. So that would be,
Hmm.
I'm sure that's coming to bear on this film. And I bet
Right.
there's a lot written about this. I didn't leave myself time to read up, unfortunately,
Hmm.
but
I was actually Googling like what was the first like openly queer
mm,
movie in Indian history, and I discovered it's a movie called Benam Basti. I mean, sorry, Badnaam Basti, which literally means like alley of like ill repute, like Badnaam, like,
yeah.
and it is a movie from 1971.
Wow.
And it's very, very hard to find anywhere.
Mhm.
It's basically the writer and director are some people called Prem Kapoor that I've never heard of. And I mean, this movie is just, it's really difficult to find, but that's the oldest one that I could find. And then I actually discovered while doing my research that, okay, so Fire came out in 96, like it was shown at the Toronto Film Festival in 1996. But in 1995, there was a movie starring Irfan. And it was called Adhura. And
Mm,
in that, he has like a gay affair. He plays a gay man affair with this actor whom I don't know who that is, but that was also a movie that they made, and it the censor board actually refused to pass that movie, and so that's why they just kind of like abandoned it. So the director of Adhura is Ashish Balram Nagpal, and he stars in it. So he's Irfan's like lover in the movie, and Kitu Gidwani plays this Balram guy's wife in it.
mm,
And I read like a little snippet of an interview of Irfan Khan talking about it, because apparently there were some very sexually explicit scenes in it, which is what caused the censor board to completely like just refuse to certify it. Whereas like the censor board does traditionally certify films, and like they'll give them an adult. That's the
mhm,
only thing. Like Fire is adult. Kama Sutra, the one that has Rekha in it, the Mira Nair one, that one is adult. So like there's, I think Utsav may have been adult when it was first released. So they'll give it an adult certification, but they'll let you make it. But Adhura wasn't even like, they just refused to certify it. Like they basically just, you couldn't show it at all. And apparently it was because, not because of the subject or the topic, but because it was very sexually explicit. And I was like, what? And so then I read about it, and Irfan basically, there's like a snippet of an interview somewhere that I found going down this rabbit hole, where he spoke about how he had absolutely no issues doing this movie, and he had no issues playing like a gay character, and he had no issues doing the scenes either. But the movie just, didn't get made.
mhm.
So I was like, how do I watch this movie? Because I am on a mission to watch everything that Irfan has ever done, because I love him so much. But I had absolutely no idea.
Hmm.
So that was interesting to me.
Yeah.
And then the movie that I really wanted to talk about this, which I made a lot of efforts to be able to see it, is actually a movie that just released in 2025. It's called Sabar Bonda, and it's Marathi. And at this point, it has won the Grand Jury Prize at Sundance Film Festival. It's won
Wow.
the Audience Choice Award in Los Angeles. And it's having like a really strong festival run right now. And so I really wanted to talk about it. It sounds very interesting. So this guy comes back to his village from the big city because I think there's like a funeral that he has to attend. And when he's there, he encounters this other person and they have an affair. And I wanted to watch it. So I contacted the director on Instagram and I messaged him and I was like, hey, I have a film podcast. We're doing an episode for Pride Month. I really want to watch this movie. Where do I find it, basically? Because you could, for some time, you could watch it on the Sundance channel.
Hmm.
Like you could pay to watch it, but that thing has expired. You can't see it anymore. So it was like, where can I watch this? And then he told me to contact his like PR person or his manager team, whatever people. And so I emailed that person, but that person just never got back to me. So I have no idea. I also messaged Nihit, our friend. I was like, okay, do you know this guy? Like, do you know these people? Anyone over there? Like, any angle that I can somehow get
Uh,
in? And he was like, sorry, I don't know any of these people. So I was like, okay, fine. So I guess at some point I'll just maybe be able to catch it if it shows at the San Francisco International Film Festival or something. But eventually I'm sure I'll get to watch it. So that was the one I really wanted to see just because it's been raking in all the awards. Um, and it's so funny that you were talking about like a band called Cactus because Sabarbonda literally means cactus pears, like, the
ah,
fruit. So
huh.
I was like, that's funny.
Yeah.
Um, so what are some of the more queer films that you've seen and that you've liked? They don't have to be Indian, just in general.
Oh, um, I was not prepared for this question. Uh, I mean, we did do But I Do for our purple episode,
Oh,
which is
yeah. I
Lavender,
love that.
Lavender Marriages. That one I did really, really like.
Yeah.
Uh, oh gosh. I have not rewatched Kapoor and Sons since I first,
Hmm.
and I am a little hesitant because I'm not sure how I think it would hold up. How long's it been since you
Oh.
rewatched it?
I have never rewatched it. I only saw it
What?
whenever I first saw it, and I
Uh,
remembered loving it and just being blown away by Fawad Khan's performance in that movie. Like he
yeah,
just ate it up. So,
yeah. I'm kind of looking at, the the Wikipedia list of LGBTQ plus Indian
mm,
films. There's a lot of these I haven't seen. Um,
mm.
I don't know. Gosh, not a lot is coming to mind. I will switch quickly to TV and say
Okay.
that if you have not seen Pose, the series about trans people in New York, kind of in the
Oh,
late 80s, uh, and the ballroom scene in the late in 80s and 90s New
oh
York.
wow. Okay.
1,000% recommend. It's got a very heavily trans cast. There are 3 seasons of it. I've seen the first two, and then the third season, I feel like never switched to a platform where that I had a subscription to, so I've never seen it. But of course, the AIDS pandemic is a specter
Mm,
over that whole story. If you've ever seen Paris is Burning, there are direct references to that movie in it. Paris is Burning is an amazing documentary that people should watch. I think, although there's some complications with about kind of how it was made. People don't, there are mixed opinions about kind of how that documentary was made and was it respectfully made or not. But yeah, I would really recommend Pose. And there are 3 seasons. I want to say 6 or 8 episodes per season. You will cry. I suspect it is beautiful but gutting and very, very
mm.
funny at times. Really, really an amazing film. And then honestly, the most of the queer media I consume at this point is I love watching drag queens on YouTube.
Oh yeah.
If you are a drag race fan, Sasha Velour is from the town where I live, so that's kind of what got me a little more aware of Drag Race. And then my museum did an exhibit on drag costuming a few years ago, and that really like pushed me into learning more. But so, for example, I love the show on YouTube, which is two drag queens,
Okay.
Trixie and Katya, who do. I watch that a lot. I find them very, very funny. Um, yeah, so I am not. I would have to say I'm not super well versed on queer cinema by any stretch. I'm not even sure you could call me versed, let alone well versed. But as I kind of look through this list on Wikipedia, I had intended to watch to Trangada, The Crowning Wish, which is another Ritu Ghosh film that
Mm.
references a Tagore play. And for some reason, I went for this thing that I'd already seen instead. Don't ask me why I did that, but um, this film lists Rafu Chakar as a queer film, and if that's the same
Oh,
Chakar from the
the
70s,
Neetu Singh one?
yeah, that I don't think that counts. Um,
Have
Although
you
maybe it
seen
does. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. If it's not taken seriously, does it count? I don't know. I don't know.
I love To Wong Fu, Thanks for Everything, Julie Newmar.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
That is like one
I
of my
love
favorite movies of
Desert of
all time. Like it is so good. And
Yeah.
it always kills me like when because like I love Patrick Swayze so much. And anytime you mention Patrick Swayze, people always talk about like Dirty Dancing, which yes, lots of fun, like very much an enjoyable part of my teenagers. Or they'll talk about like Ghost, which yes, also fun, very much a part of my teenagers. Everybody loves Unchained Melody. Um, and then of course Point Break, like these are the movies people talk about, and I always say, well, if you like Patrick Swayze, you must watch To Wong Fu with Love, Julie Newmar. I know the title is like so long, but
Yeah.
it's so fun and it's so satisfying and it's so enjoyable. Like it's just also Patrick Swayze looks hella gorgeous in that movie, all his outfits, everything. It's just he's so fabulous in that movie. He makes me happy. I love his like pink lipstick and his like lashes and everything. Like he's a joy and a delight in that film. So I think that would probably be that's probably my favorite. And then I don't really watch like I've watched like a tiny bit of like RuPaul's Drag Race, but then I couldn't really get into it. I know Lunchy is like a gigantic fan, so if she's watching this episode, she should take a shot.
Have you seen Priscilla, Queen of the Desert?
No, I have not, but it's on my list.
Oh yeah,
It's on my unending list that yeah.
I think you would enjoy it. And it has amazing costume design, for example.
Okay.
Yeah,
I love the birdcage.
sure.
I mean, that one is a lot of fun too. Like that is just the best.
It's, there were things I really loved at the time. Like I loved Will and Grace when it first came out.
Oh,
Um, and I loved the first Queer Eye from the early
mm,
2000s, for example. I've never watched the newer one only because
I
people
haven't
say
either.
you will cry a lot, and I was like not up for
Oh,
that for some reason. Like it's very emotional. Um,
okay.
but
Because
those
I
are
don't
things that
remember the early Queer Eye for the Straight Guy
no,
being particularly emotional. It was
I
just
don't
kind of
either.
fun.
I don't either. But that kind of like, oh, gay men, how fabulous, how fun.
Mm,
We need to complicate. I think popular media needs to really complicate that quite a bit. Um, and so looking back at something like Will and Grace, you're like, but it was 20, almost 30 years ago at this point. I think it
yeah.
was 98 that started, right? So it's over
Hmm.
25 years ago. I know they revived the show for a little bit. I haven't seen any of that. But, they are documents to how language and thought can change,
Yeah.
over.
Well, Sex and the City as well. I mean, I remember watching Sex and the City initially, and it was always like, oh, there's like the gay best friend, and he's always like fashionable and everything. And it was all
Yeah,
like every stereotype you can think
yeah,
of.
yeah.
Yeah, that was definitely like an interesting era. And then also in Bollywood, we're like for the longest time, if you wanted to show that anyone was like queer in any capacity, it was always like so infuriatingly insulting. Like,
Very broad, like literal limp
yeah,
wrist, like
caricatures basically, like someone to
yeah.
laugh at and just very like low and horrible. I've always had very complicated feelings, mostly negative, towards Dostana. How do you feel about it? It
So I
just
really
it gives
enjoyed
me
it.
the ick.
I really enjoyed it at the time because, and I think what I said in my blog post is that it felt to me like a big golden retriever puppy, right? Like it was
Hmm.
warm-hearted, maybe a little placing its feet in the wrong place at times, but like it meant well. But even fairly quickly after that, having conversations with some queer friends, I was like, I see like they offered
Yeah.
some of the film that I hadn't absorbed and I or hadn't noticed and I was like, yeah, I take your point. So I have never rewatched that one either.
Mm-mm.
I suspect I would find it, if not screechingly terrible, then really not a thing that needs to get my eyeballs on it at this.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, it's probably important to say here, I'm a straight person. Um, on my good days, I think I hope I live up to the standard of ally. I've certainly done some work in my professional setting to provide platforms for queer voices and working with queer community members for them to tell their own stories in a museum setting. And those have been projects that have been extremely meaningful to me, like the most meaningful in my entire career. But I am not a queer person, so a lot of this is not really for me to say. But
Hmm.
as a viewer who is interested, these are some of the things that strike me. But I like, yeah, or like the kids today watching Dostana and just being like, "Good Lord, this was
Yeah.
made," or do they watch it and they're like, "It's kind of stupid, but I enjoy it," or
Yeah.
does it seem like when we look back on Three's Company and we're like, "Good God,"
Right.
um, I
Yeah, I don't know.
I
I
don't know.
can't verbalize what about this Thana pissed me off. I think it was a combination of having also seen Kalhonaho, and I really, really hated
That
the
one's
whole Kantabai
very,
nonsense.
very problematic. Yep.
Yeah, the whole like Shahrukh and Saif, are they together? Are they not? Like that was just so awful and horrible to me. And then given the fact that Dostana is also like, it's that same like production house and then Keijo and everything. And I think some of that like annoyance
Yeah.
carried over to Dostana as well. And then the whole like Mada Ladla song and everything, like
Yeah.
it felt cringy to me, but I couldn't necessarily verbalize why. Whereas the Galhonaho, the whole Kantab, I think is that's just like horrible and just like awful.
Which is one of the such wonderful things about Badaido, right? That some of the family comes around at the end
Hmm.
and celebrates this new family with the adopted child and things like that, which are so
Yeah.
lovely. So yeah, and thank goodness for things like streaming services where more
Hmm.
platforms for some of these stories are available. If the censors aren't gonna
Hmm.
sign off on something, fine, we'll take it somewhere else.
Yeah. I mean, I will say that one thing that like annoys me a little bit in the sense that I think it's like a little pat and like a little just feel good but not based in reality is that sometimes with some of the streaming services, like for example, I love Patalok. I think Patalok is such a good show, and Jaideep Ahlavat is just like brilliant in it. And so I saw season 1 and season 2, and in season 2 there's like a very very small thing of like there's this inspector Ansari who we discover is gay. So he's always like on the phone and he's chatting with the person, and Jaideep Ahlavat teases him at one point like, oh, sir has a girl, like he's his boss. So he's like, oh, sir has a girlfriend, and it's like, no, sir has a boyfriend actually. And then when he discovers it, he's just like taken aback. And Jaideep Ahlavat's character, like he is really good at his job, but he's very brusque. He's kind of a terrible husband to Gulpanag. Poor Gulpanag. She always gets stuck with terrible husbands.
Yeah.
And he's just and he's Haryanvi, and like the way his character is written, there's a scene where after he discovers that Ansari, his boss, may probably potentially be gay and be in a gay relationship with a man, there's a scene where in the car together and he just like says like, oh, it doesn't really like apropos of nothing, just because it's weighing on his mind, he just blurts out that like, oh, I don't really care if you're with a man or something like that, like it doesn't affect me. And Ansari's just kind of like, okay. And then they just keep going, and I was like, okay, I know you're trying to make the audience feel endeared towards this character, but that is just not what this character will do. He is literally a middle-aged Haryanvi guy who works in the police force. He's very stuck in his ways, extremely orthodox, really sexist and patriarchal. The chance that he is going to somehow give his tacit or verbal approval to his boss who happens to be gay, I'm just not buying it. So I sometimes I feel like they throw these like little things at people to make us feel happy, or because they want to show that their character is so goody goody. But I'm like, it doesn't make sense though. It would make far more sense for that character to be repelled by it, unfortunately, because that's just who he is, you know. So sometimes I find it annoying when they do that, though. But I will say, in Fire, when Shabana Azmi wants to leave her house, like, she is very dutiful to the end. Like, when even when she's decided, I'm going to leave the house and I'm going to make a new life for myself with Nandita Das's character, she says to Nandita Das, I will not leave this house until I've told my husband, until I've said what I need to say to him. You go ahead, I'll meet you at the dargah. And Nandita Das is like,
Mm.
fine, I'll wait for you. And she goes and tells Kulbhushan Karbanda, she goes to say to her mother-in-law, the same mother-in-law who is handicapped, who's had a stroke, who cannot talk, who Shabana Azmi from the beginning of the movie has been taking care of. Like, literally, she's been cleaning up after her because the lady doesn't have bladder control. She literally goes up to her mother-in-law to tell her she's leaving. And the mother-in-law has been seeing the goings on, right? Like, she's aware, she's not stupid. She comes up to Rishwan Azmi. You're so convinced in that second that she's going to hug her, or she's going to give her tacit approval, like, okay, go live your best life, like, without saying so. You think she's going to do that? She comes really close to Shabana Azmi, and you can see kind of like that hope in Shabana Azmi's eyes, like, maybe I'll get like a little bit of approval. She comes close and she spits in Shabana Azmi's face. And then Shabana's face, just like, you can see her face just like crumple. And even for me, because I had not seen this movie in so long, it felt like, it felt so violent. It was just kind of like, man, you really are such a horrible human being. Like, this woman has literally, like, taken care of you her entire married life. Your own sons cannot be bothered to do anything for you, and this woman has, her whole life, her whole day revolves around you. And now that she's leaving the house for, you know, seeking some happiness for herself, which, by the way, your son could never give her, you're just gonna spit her in her face. Like, man, I hate people sometimes. I was just like so disappointed. Having said that, I think it's good writing,
Mm,
because
mhm,
I think it's believable.
mm.
And unfortunately, that's what happens. And, you know, you got to do what you got to do, and some people are going to hate you for it, and that's just what it is.
Yeah.
So, yeah, good writing, but pretty harrowing and gut wrenching. So,
Yeah.
another reason I will not be watching Fire for 20 more years. Okay, did you have anything to add, or should we conclude our episode?
I think I would just ask our listeners slash viewers if they have any recommendations for queer films in India, please let me know because there, I mean, I can look at this Wikipedia list,
Or
but
TV shows?
yeah, or TV shows, like these lists are kind of, you wonder sometimes. Um,
Yeah.
but I wonder if Rafu Chakar is on there because it's got drag in it in a way.
Yeah, like the little bit of cross dressing that they're doing in it,
Yeah, I mean,
maybe.
there is a relationship that yeah, I feel like it's treated as a joke. So there, anyway,
Mhm.
yeah, let me know what else I should watch. I'm interested to learn. Also, if you have Ritu Ghosh favorites that we have not discussed yet, tell us because I bet we could be convinced to do an episode on some of his films. So,
I would have to talk about something else because I've already talked about Raincoat and Chokher Bali. So
right,
at this
we'll pick some
point,
different ones. We'll pick something from 2003.
okay. All right. Well, I think this concludes this episode of Filmi Ladies. Happy Pride. And we will see you next week. And then please tell us what movies or TV shows you enjoy. And if you have not seen To Wong Fu with Love Julie Newmar, please do so. It is amazing. And you will love the costumes. And Patrick Swayze is fabulous. All right. Thank you for watching. Bye.